Hi 7-2. Today we are going to start reviewing narrative writing, which we covered in quarter one. And for this video, we're going to review plot structure. So the first thing that you are going to see is the plot diagram. So hopefully you guys remember this from quarter one, but the plot diagram basically just plots out exactly what happens in the story so that you can track the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the resolution. So if you remember from quarter one, we watched a lot of those, the Coca-Cola commercial, we watched the Bob's Burgers snippet, we watched the Pixar shorts, and we plot diagrammed those videos. And so for this review, I wanted to go over the plot diagram and share this PowerPoint with you guys about the different parts of narrative writing. Okay, so you know if you watch the intro video for the week, you are going to have to write a short story this week. So you will need to incorporate the plot diagram to do so. And so I have over the next 3 slides the vocabulary for the plot diagram and for narrative writing for any of you guys that can't remember the exact terms for everything. Okay, so those 3 slides that I just reviewed with you are exactly what you're going to need to include in your short story. So if you can't remember what the exposition of the story is, then make sure you go through those slides and that you refresh yourself on those terms. So just briefly, I'll do it real quick. The exposition of the story is when the narrator or the author set up the story. Okay, so in the exposition, you're going to be introduced to the characters. You're going to know who the protagonist is and the antagonist. You're going to have a sense of the setting, so the time and place. You're going to start to understand what the conflict is. Remember, internal conflict is the self-conflict. So, for example, Harry Potter not being sure if he needs to follow Dumbledore's quest for the Deathly Hallows or if he needs to be focused solely on getting the Horcruxes. Okay, so that was an internal conflict. Whereas the external conflict is where they're fighting against someone. So Harry Potter and Voldemort, that's an external conflict. Okay, so in the exposition of the story, they set out all of those things for you. And then the rising action. So this is the beginning parts of the story where the action is rising up, okay? Some events are taking place. The story's getting a little bit more interesting. The climax is the high point of the story, okay? This is where the action hits its peak. And then after that, you have the falling action. So these are the things that are starting to tie up the story, okay? So the story's not over yet, but everything's kind of like wrapping up. And then that resolution, that is when the story ends. Okay, so that's everything that gets tied up. That resolution could be a cliffhanger, but it's still the end of the story. Okay, and so those are the key words that you need to make sure that you know so that you can include them in your own story. Okay, so those are the vocabs. Now, this is a simpler plot diagram, and what I want you to do is maybe sketch this out on a sheet of notebook paper or pull up a Word document and copy and paste this image over. But I want you guys to plot diagram the short cold opening of a Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode. Okay, so on the next slide here, you have this video embedded. So I want you to pause my video right now, and I want you to go to the PowerPoint and watch this Brooklyn Nine-Nine Holt shows up a dancer episode. Okay, so it's only about a minute. So I need you to watch that. And then go continue the PowerPoint once you're done. Okay, and as you're watching it, I want you to plot diagram. Using this plot diagram, I want you to plot diagram the 1 minute cold open of the Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode. Okay? Okay, so hopefully you guys paused this video and you watched the Holt Brooklyn Nine-Nine video a couple times and you have your plot diagram. So right now I want us to work together and fill out this plot diagram together, and you can compare the plot diagram of yours, and hopefully you can show me that you've done this. So you're going to send me a picture of your plot diagram through Remind 101. Okay, so what is the conflict of the story? What's the conflict of that Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode? Right, the street dancer and Captain Holt have a conflict, right? That's the external conflict. So the exposition of the story. This is, did we get introduced to the characters? Yes, you know that opening scene, you see the street dancer dancing, you see Jake or Peralta, Boyle, and Captain Holt. They're leaving a food cart and they're chatting, okay? You kind of know that Jake's a silly guy because he mentions that he's eating this sandwich for breakfast, but that Amy says he needs more vegetables, so he's included peppers and onions. So you get kind of like this sense that he's kind of silly. Captain Holt, you know, he's wearing his uniform. He looks very buttoned up. So we're getting some characterization just within these first couple seconds. So the first event, the first rising action that happens is that the street dancer is dancing and he kicks the coffee out of Captain Holt's hand. And so then there's some like, the coffee spills all over him. And the next thing is that Captain Holt says to the dancer that he needs to watch himself. And the dancer replies, "I'm sorry, cop." But you'll notice that the tone of the dancer wasn't respectful, right? He was very like rude. He was looking for some sort of like argument to happen. And so then the next event is Jake tells them all, okay, I think we need to calm down. And then the dancer asks the captain, if I don't calm down, right, what's going to happen? Are you going to arrest me for dancing? So everything's getting really tense here, right? So you guys can see that it went from a simple fun, these three co-workers are talking, and then it's rising up. So what is the climax of the story? So the climax is when Captain Holt says, "You call that dancing?" and starts dancing, right? So that's like the high point of the action. And you can see from Jake's face that he's very excited about what is about to happen. So then the following action is when Jake freaks out and he's trying to take a video of the dancing captain, okay? And so he's fumbling with his phone. He's trying to get out of his pocket. His phone's dead. Jake and Boyle can't get their phones to work. And when Jake finally starts recording, the dance is over. So the resolution of that story is that Captain Holt and the dancer smile, they have their arms around each other, and they say the situation is diffused. And so this is how the creators of Brooklyn Nine-Nine are able to, within a 1-minute video, show a narrative story, okay? And so that followed the plot diagram. So when you're writing your stories, you need to make sure you have these moments of that you've set the exposition, you have the rising action, you have the climax, falling action, and resolution. If Captain Holt had just started dancing and then it shot all the way down to the resolution, you as an audience would be a little bit confused, right? But because they've added in Jake freaking out about videotaping it, Holt in the background dancing, you're seeing some of the story wrapping up. And so remember, you're writing a short story. So if you remember your Q1 projects for the Myth project, that was quite a long story. So you're going to do the same thing you did for the Myth project, but you're going to shrink it down and you're going to do a short story. And we read short stories last week with Hello, My Name Is, and In My Mom's Shoes. Those were memoirs, but they were short stories. And this week, we're going to read another example of a short story called 7th Grade. And so hopefully through all of those texts, you'll start to realize how you can create your own short story and stick to that time constraint. Okay, and that's the first video for this week.